If you believe quiet dignity still means something, if you think respect should be earned, not mocked, like and subscribe, because what happened in that small-town school hallway needs to be remembered. They say kids see everything, even when adults think they're being clever. But sometimes, it's not the kids who are watching. Sometimes it's someone standing quietly behind a corner, someone who's already seen too much to ever laugh at a patch. It started on a Tuesday, gray light pouring in through streaked windows, and my daughter Layla's school holding one of those routine parent-teacher meet and greets that barely lasted more than 10 minutes per parent. I remember the hallway smelled like floor wax and damp markers. I hadn't been in a school building in nearly 20 years, but you never forget that scent. I wasn't dressed up, no pearls, no pressed blazer like the other moms. Just my old denim jacket with the faded patch on the shoulder. A threadbare combat controller insignia that had been sewn back on more times than I could count. I didn't expect anyone to notice it. It wasn't for show. That patch had sat silent for decades, just like the woman wearing it. Until she didn't. Miss Harding, my daughter's teacher, was the type who looked like she had her calendar planned to the hour, high bun, sharp lines, and a permanent smile that never quite reached her eyes. She barely looked up when I sat down. "Layla's bright," she said, flipping through a manila folder like it personally offended her. "But she's withdrawn. Daydreams. Sometimes stares off during group work. Shows a tendency toward detachment." I nodded, not surprised. Layla had spent most of her life moving. Bases, motels, housing assignments. She was a map in sneakers. I was just about to speak, just to explain, not to excuse, when Ms. Harding glanced at my arm. Her lips curved, just slightly. "Oh," she said, tapping her pen. "That patch. Is that real? Or like one of those thrift shop things?" Then she laughed. Actually laughed. Short and sharp, like she was waiting for me to join in. I didn't. I just stared at her. Not angry. Just still. I found silence unnerves people more than shouting. "You don't have to play dress up here," she added, almost sweetly, as if she were doing me a favor. "We don't judge." At that moment, I didn't say a word. But someone else did. From the doorway behind her desk, a man's voice cut in. "Is that CCT?" Calm, measured, and unmistakably familiar in tone. "Principal Jameson." He stepped in slow, hands clasped behind his back, his eyes flicking to my shoulder, then to Miss Harding, who suddenly looked like she'd said something she couldn't take back. "Yes," I said, for the first time since sitting down. "Combat control. 720th STG. Jameson didn't smile. He didn't nod. He straightened. Just slightly. Like his spine recognized something before his mind had caught up. "Excuse me," he said, and left. Miss Harding cleared her throat, rifled some papers that didn't need rifling, and muttered something about class sizes. I left without another word. But I knew that silence wasn't the end of it. Because respect doesn't always shout when it walks in, it watches first. That night, Layla didn't say much during dinner. Just picked at her mac and cheese and asked, "Did she say anything?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw the same storm behind her eyes that I used to wear like armor. "She said a lot," I replied. But she didn't say anything worth remembering. The next day, something changed. Not in Miss Harding. She was the same, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield, lips pursed like the world owed her orderly silence. But the kids looked at Layla a little differently. One girl asked where she got her patch. Another asked if her mom really flew planes or something. Layla didn't answer. She didn't need to. That patch, now pinned on the inside of her backpack flap, was her answer. Later that week, I passed through the school lobby and spotted a photo on the bulletin board, some kind of Veterans Day announcement. Beneath it, a single sheet. "We'd like to invite any parents who have served to attend next Friday's assembly." No one reached out to me directly, but I showed up anyway. Didn't speak. Just stood in the back, jacket zipped halfway. The flag hung limp behind the stage. Kids whispered. Teachers shuffled scripts. And then Miss Harding took the mic. Her voice was clear, confident, too bright. "We thank all those who serve. And we're honored to welcome today's surprise guest." She looked down the list, blinking. Ruth Jensen." I froze. She hadn't seen me in the crowd. But Jameson had. He was the one who nodded toward the stage. And just like that, I walked. Not out of pride. Not out of vengeance. But because silence only holds value if you choose when to break it. I took the mic, looked out at 100 middle school faces. And said nothing. For a full 10 seconds. You could hear the vents humming. Then I spoke. "My daughter is quiet. Like me. And sometimes, that makes people uncomfortable. I paused. But quiet doesn't mean weak. It doesn't mean uncertain. It means we've learned how to listen before speaking, how to wait before judging. And sometimes, it means we've seen things others haven't. I turned toward Miss Harding, who now stood stock-still by the curtains. Some of us wear patches because we've earned them, and some mock what they don't understand. I stepped down. No applause. No music. Just the soft scraping of chairs as people stood. First the students, then the staff, then finally, Jameson. He didn't clap. He did something louder. He saluted. And just like that, the silence ended. But the respect began. You don't tell your kid when you cry in the car after school. You just wipe your eyes, touch up your eyeliner in the rear view, and pretend like the world is business as usual. But that night after the assembly, after that stiff auditorium air and the rows of surprised faces, Layla looked at me differently. Not like a mom who always says, "We'll be fine," but like someone she was seeing for the first time without fuck. She didn't say much, just handed me her backpack without being asked and set the table without a word. That's when I noticed it. She'd taken the patch off the inside flap and stitched it onto the outside. Thread still fresh, tiny knots uneven. But it was there. Worn. Seen. The next morning at drop-off, the sidewalk buzzed with its usual noise, parents rushing kids, late bells chiming faintly, students trudging through sleepy routines, but something in the current had shifted. A few heads turned as I walked her in. Some of the moms I used to nod at awkwardly made room without thinking. Miss Harding stood at the entrance like always, clipboard in hand like it was a badge, but this time her eyes hesitated when they landed on me. Just for a second. She gave a thin smile and turned her attention back to the line of students. I didn't need her apology. I needed her awareness. There's a difference. Principal Jameson caught me at the door, waved me over like we were old friends. We weren't. We'd never spoken more than 4 words before that day. "Miss Jensen," he said, and he meant it, Jensen, not Mom. Not Layla's parent. Like he knew my name mattered. "I hope yesterday didn't catch you off guard." I raised an eyebrow. "The public address for the salute?" He actually smiled. "Both," he said. "But respectfully done." I nodded. That kind of honesty was rare in schools like this, where image mattered more than integrity. I was surprised, I admitted. But I've learned not to be disappointed. His face softened. "That patch," he said, quietly. "I saw it once in Kabul. A medic wore it. That man pulled 3 out of a Humvee before the RPGs landed." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The silence between those sentences filled in the rest. He walked me to the front steps, and as he turned back toward the building, I saw it. His posture had shifted again. Not in the puffed-up way young officers strut, but in the way men move when they've carried weight the world doesn't see. The next few days passed without ceremony. No speeches. No apologies. Just slow ripple effects. One teacher stopped me at pickup to say Layla had answered a group question brilliantly. Another handed her a flyer for the robotics team, said they could use someone quiet but observant. She'd never said anything like that before. I knew. And while the school adjusted, Miss Harding didn't change overnight, but something cracked. One afternoon, she returned the confiscated photo Layla had brought for history class. The one of me crouched beside the rescue chopper, helmet off, grit smeared across my cheek like war paint. She didn't say anything, just placed it on the table between us during our second meeting and looked away. A small gesture, but gestures count. That night, Layla asked if we could print out a second copy to keep in her locker. "Not to show off," she said quickly, almost nervously, "just so I remember it's okay to be different." I told her we'd print 3. One for her locker, one for her desk at home, and one for the inside cover of her journal. So when someone makes fun of you again, I told her, you'll remember why they don't matter. She blinked fast, nodded, and went quiet again, but the kind of quiet that feels stronger, not smaller. On Thursday morning, I was dropping off some permission slips when I overheard a conversation between 2 staffers by the front desk. I wasn't eavesdropping, they weren't whispering. "You know she's not just a vet, right?" one said. "She did JEC stuff. Air Force Special Ops. That patch is not just a souvenir." "I heard Jameson served with her," the other replied. "Or at least knew of her unit." Harding really stepped in it, the first added. I turned the corner before they saw me. I wasn't interested in their opinions, only in the fact that the silence I'd worn for years was finally loud enough to make people listen. But what really hit me came the next day, when Layla brought home a drawing. Not for class. Just something she'd sketched during lunch. It showed a small girl with a backpack too big for her, standing next to a tall figure in uniform. But the figure's face wasn't drawn. Just the patch. And beneath it, a caption. She doesn't say much. But she never misses anything. I stared at it for longer than I'd admit. Because even when your service ends, your watch never really does. You stay sharp, stay aware. But you also stay tired. And sometimes you wonder if it was worth it. That's why, when a kid draws you that way, not as a war hero, not with guns or medals, but just standing quietly, you realize it wasn't the uniform that mattered. It was the way you carried it when no one was looking. And maybe, just maybe, that's how your daughter finally learns how to carry herself too. They didn't plan a ceremony. There was no email blast, no flyer in Layla's backpack, no special recognition announced over the PA system. That wasn't how these things worked, at least, not when the people involved understood the meaning of real honor. It was the following Friday, and the school had planned a Community Appreciation Day, some low-key excuse for local firemen, doctors, and former students to swing by for handshakes and plastic-wrapped cookies. I figured I'd stay clear. I didn't need a second moment under fluorescent lights. But Layla asked me to come. You don't have to talk, she said, twisting the strap of her lunch bag. Just be there. And so I was. Not in uniform. Not in boots. Just in that same denim jacket, fraying at the seams, the patch riding like a heartbeat on my left arm. As I walked through the front door, something shifted. Not loud. Not visible. But you could feel it. Parents I didn't know gave me nods. A teacher I hadn't spoken to opened the office door without being asked. And Miss Harding? She didn't say a word, but she did look me in the eye. That was new. Layla's class was in the multipurpose room, set up like some kind of open house fair, and as soon as I walked in, she stood a little taller. Just a little. Her friend nudged her. She smiled and waved me over confidently, without apology, and then did something that hit me harder than any medal ever did. She introduced me, not as my mom, not as someone who served, but as the reason I know you can be strong without raising your voice. Those were her exact words. I didn't know whether to cry or salute. Maybe both. Before I could respond, Principal Jameson stepped up beside us. I hadn't even seen him enter, but that was his way, quiet steps, firm presence. He looked at me, then looked out at the room full of middle schoolers buzzing with sugary drinks and paper handouts, and clapped his hands once. If I could have your attention for just a moment, he said. Some of you know Miss Jensen. Some of you don't. But I'll say this, every now and then, a school gets lucky enough to be in the presence of someone whose quiet changes the way we speak, whose stillness teaches us how to move. The room calmed. Layla looked up at me, her lips parted just slightly, like she couldn't believe someone was saying this out loud. Jameson continued. Service doesn't always come with a uniform, and it doesn't end when the paperwork does. Ms. Jensen served this country with distinction, and she continues to serve, not by telling stories, but by showing strength in every step. A few people clapped, mostly adults. I didn't speak. I just nodded, hand resting gently on Layla's shoulder. But what happened next wasn't planned. Jameson didn't announce it. No music cued. One of the sixth-grade boys stepped forward, maybe on instinct, maybe because he'd heard something his teacher finally bothered to tell him. He saluted. Small hand, crooked fingers. But it was real. Then another. And another. One by one, like falling dominoes, students across the room stood straighter, some placing hands on hearts, others just watching silently. And behind them, teachers followed. Not all, but enough. Miss Harding remained in the back, lips tight, unsure, until she caught Layla's eye. And then for the first time she stood too. She didn't salute, but she didn't look away. And that was enough. Later that afternoon, as parents gathered their kids and folding chairs scraped against tile floors, I felt a tap on my elbow. It was Jameson again. He held something in his hand. A simple plaque. Not official, not engraved. Just a piece of wood with a patch glued to the center. The same insignia. Below it, in marker, she taught us what silence can carry. The kids made it, he said quietly. Thought maybe Layla would want it. Or maybe you would. I took it. Not because I needed recognition, but because they finally understood. On the way home, Layla asked if she could wear my jacket. Just until we get to the car, she said. I don't want to spill anything on it. I handed it over. She slipped it on, sleeves swallowing her hands, but chin high, shoulders square. And as we walked through the lot, I noticed her reflection in the glass of a parked car, small, quiet, steady, and the patch right there on her arm. Just like mine. Not a souvenir, not a prop, but a reminder that strength doesn't always look like shouting, that courage doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it looks like a 12-year-old girl walking beside her mother in a jacket too big, carrying the weight of a legacy the world almost missed, but finally chose to see.